We get to all of that. One more expert we need to talk to, and that is Greg Willard, who is taking time out of his busy day to come by. He is the KTRS legal analyst, and he guides us through all of these things. St. Louis University law professor. Good morning, Greg Willard.
Good morning, McGraw.
All right, first things first. Governor Greitens made a statement at 4 o'clock before the report came out, and my first thought was, wow, is he breaking the gag order by going after the mistress in this? Did he break the law, the gag order that the city judge imposed on the case?
I think a fair reading or a technical reading of the gag order and a fair reading or a technical reading of what the governor said yesterday afternoon, he probably violated the gag order.
Really?
I think probably so. But the reality is that given this whole impeachment piece,
right,
as opposed to singularly the criminal trial.
Right.
I think on a scale of 1 to 100, given the reality of the impeachment piece, the violation maybe is a 19.
Gotcha.
If there had been no impeachment inquiry at all,
right,
and the governor made that press conference, that would have been about a 96 on a 100 scale of a violation.
Right.
So technically a violation, whether the
a small violation, but in the context of it, not a big deal.
I don't think it will be a big deal. Obviously, it's up to Judge Burleson, and the circuit attorney may not even call it up.
Right.
And the judge may, on his own, decide, I'm not going to bring it up sua sponte.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So reading the report, we were talking off the air, reading the report, at the end of the report, one of my thoughts was, who cares about a picture, and who cares if he transmitted it through some digital platform? There's a lot more terrible things going on here. Why is that the crime and none of the other things even mentioned about breaking the law or doing something inappropriate?
You make a very astute observation as to the report, and I think it's important for our listeners that we kind of walk through it. First, I think any Missouri citizen, I think, could agree with this. It is a very sad Thursday morning in Missouri.
Right.
In terms of the photograph, the governor is being prosecuted for felony invasion of privacy under the Missouri criminal statute. One of the elements of that alleged crime involves a photograph. And that's why there has been such hue and cry up until the gag order as to, is there a photograph, was there a photograph, back and forth.
Right.
The question of a photograph having been taken is essential to the criminal prosecution. Now just put that proceeding to the side for a moment. Now we go over to the impeachment proceeding and your very astute point. There could never have been introduced the notion of a photograph, hypothetically. And McGraw, we would still be where we are today with what was in that report.
Right. The impeachment process doesn't care if a picture was taken or it was digitally transferred.
Precisely. As we've said on the air, and let's say again for our listeners this morning, to be impeached in Missouri, the official need not have committed a crime.
Right.
Non-criminal conduct can be sufficient in Missouri to impeach an official.
So you're saying the committee wasn't really concerned with the picture, so that's why there's not a lot of picture conversation in the report.
The committee, I think, again, a fair reading of what those 7 folks did. And let's just take a step sideways for a moment. Irrespective of your politics, I think we all ought to tip our cap to those 7 representatives who had a horrifically difficult task, and they did it in as bipartisan a manner as I think we've seen in a long time. But in terms of the photograph, they looked into it. They asked questions about it. You can see some of the follow-up questions in the transcripts. But the universe of facts in which they were interested in, McGraw, spanned much more broadly than the narrow criminal charge that is being prosecuted down in the city.
Right.
They were looking much more broadly than that.
Yeah. Okay. So let's switch now to Kim Gardner and the city trial. Presumably, she either read this report before or has interviewed these people and got a similar story. So, reading this report, again, you're the lawyer. Was there no other charge besides transferring a photo? Because it seems to me there was assault in there. There was coercion in there. There was assault a couple of times. It seems like there might have been other charges to charge the governor with than just invasion of privacy for taking a picture.
Couple of things, McGraw. We don't know, but we can, I think, fairly speculate. Number one, the grand jury, I think, was presented only with evidence relating to this felony invasion of privacy.
Okay.
Maybe they were presented other evidence and other charges, but I don't think so. Secondly, as to whether the circuit attorney considered other charges and has already cast those to the side, we don't know. It could be, for example, the circuit attorney said, after having interviewed Mr. S. and Ms. S. and the other witnesses, the circuit attorney may have said, I don't think we can prove those charges beyond a reasonable doubt. Or the circuit attorney may say, we need to do more investigation, which she has said publicly.
Right.
They are continuing. So maybe these other charges that you referenced, maybe those are subject to a continuing investigation by the circuit attorney. We don't know. What we do know is the circuit attorney was confident with the felony invasion of privacy, and that was the charge handed up by the grand jury.
Yeah. Maybe, I mean, could you even go so far as to say maybe a statute of limitations ran out on some type of assault charge or a...
It could be, because you'll recall, McGraw, that the statute of limitations on felony invasion of privacy was within about 30 days
Right.
of running, and so that's why some would say it was particularly expedited in the indictment. As to what the statute of limitations on other possible charges might be, obviously we have no way of knowing, but that could be a consideration.
Right.
That it's a longer statute of limitations, so there's no rush.
I thought the governor was the only one who could call a special session, and Todd Richardson, Speaker of the House, yesterday said that they're getting ready to call a special session.
The Missouri legislature, based on a 1988 amendment to the Missouri Constitution, has the power to call itself back into session. It needs the signatures of 3/4 of the members of both parties. And my understanding of Speaker Richardson's comments yesterday was that he is going to proceed with that process to ask the legislature to come back into session after they adjourn on May 18th.
I just want it on the record that he doesn't get these questions beforehand. How did you know that law was signed in 1988? Come on, man. That is not fair.
You know, it's well known in the legal community. You come on the air with McGraw Millhaven, you better have your A game.
Holy mackerel. Do you know what letter the bill was when it was introduced? That is ridiculous. Was it a Tuesday or a Thursday it was signed? Holy mackerel.
A game on Thursday morning.
All right. Last question for Greg Willard, KTRS legal analyst, and that is this. Reading the report, your expert legal mind, you talk to people, you listen to people, you watch the tea leaves. Taking away what you read last night, what do you think? What do you say?
I would give yourself and myself a pat on the back for our prior prognostication on your show. And that was, McGraw, we have said several times, the real jeopardy to Governor Greitens is not the criminal proceeding, it is the impeachment proceeding. And I think what we can clearly see now is certainly the criminal proceeding is a serious matter. But let there be no doubt, right now, this Thursday morning, let there be no doubt, the governor is in serious legal jeopardy in terms of the impeachment process by the Missouri House of Representatives. And again, as we've talked, if the impeachment process in Missouri is so unique as compared to the other states, if you are a public official, McGraw, in the United States, one of the last states you want to be subject to impeachment is Missouri.
Your work with Gerald Ford, you had about as close of a front row seat to Richard Nixon's resignation as anybody still living. We were talking off the air that people within his own party came to him and said, "It's time, Governor." And there's a sense in Missouri that there's not those people who can go to the governor, and if there are, he's not listening.
In August of 1974, President Nixon had made it very clear to his advisors and his supporters he was not going to resign. Senator Barry Goldwater, Senator Hugh Scott, and others came to the White House and said, "Mr. President, it's over. We're not going to support you." And that was the fulcrum upon which he resigned on August the 9th. I guess the question that some are asking, opponents, if you will, of the governor this morning, are there any Barry Goldwater, Hugh Scotts, who are sort of the elders that have a relationship with the governor? Whether one agrees that the governor should resign or not, I don't care. I'm not going to take a position. But I think the question of the party elders, it's a different paradigm today, McGraw.
Well, it's one thing for a Democrat from Kansas City or St. Louis to call for it, but when Josh Hawley calls for it, when Ann Wagner calls for it, when Peter Kinder calls for it, those are some heavy names within the party. You have to take notice of that.
Very much so. And I think the other, you go back to my former boss, President Ford. I recall last night, McGraw, a moment in the spring of 1977. I'm sitting with President Ford, and we're watching the David Frost interview of Nixon, the Frost-Nixon interviews. And Nixon said a sentence in those interviews that I recall last night as to Governor Greitens. And Nixon said, "I gave them a sword, and they stuck it in, and they twisted it with relish." And I think that statement by President Nixon has an eerie familiarity when you read the report as to the jeopardy the governor finds himself in this morning.
Just out of curiosity, what color socks was Nixon wearing in that Frost-Nixon interview? This man knows all. Greg Willard, we'll let you get back to work. Thanks for coming in.
Great to be